Left in the dust, the wind howled through the narrow streets of the alien colony, carrying with it the sharp scent of rust, oil, and dust. Shadows stretched long under the pale orange sky, and the weak sun was sinking fast, casting a dying glow over the cracked stone walls. A small crowd had gathered near the colony's outer wall, not to help, but to watch. Two figures emerged from the haze, an alien woman with tired, wild eyes, and a young girl in a battered wheelchair. The girl's skin was pale blue, her silver hair tangled, and her thin hands gripped the chair's metal arms. She looked too fragile for this harsh place. Her mother's steps were quick, almost impatient. As if she wanted this walk to end, they stopped near the wall, where the street fell silent except for the creak of the chair's rusted wheels. The mother's eyes darted around, scanning the crowd as though she expected someone to stop her. But no one moved. The colony citizens stood in silence, some out of fear, others out of cold disinterest. The girl looked up at her mother, her voice soft and uncertain. "Where are we going?" The mother didn't answer. Instead, she bent down, her hands trembling, and whispered something that the wind almost carried away. "Forgive me." Before the girl could understand, her mother's hands left the wheelchair handles. She took a step back, then another, and then, without looking back, she turned and walked away. Not slowly, not hesitantly, but quickly, as if afraid her resolve might break if she lingered. "Mother?" The girl's voice cracked. She reached out her hand, but the figure was already disappearing into the shadows between buildings. "Mother, wait." Her call echoed, thin and desperate, across the stone walls. No answer came. The crowd shifted uneasily, some muttering under their breath. A tall alien male whispered to his companion, "She's better off gone. Those who can't walk only slow the colony down." Another said, "The Juggernaut will handle her now." At the mention of that name, several in the crowd took a cautious step backward from the dark end of the street. Heavy metal footsteps began to echo deep, steady, and unnervingly slow. The sound grew louder until a massive shadow emerged from the gloom. The Juggernaut stood at the street's mouth. Towering over everyone, its armored plating was dark and dented from years of battle. Two glowing red eyes scanned the crowd like searchlights, and the air seemed to grow heavier. This was no ordinary machine. It was a war relic, built for destruction. Not compassion. The girl froze, her small frame trembling. Her wide silver eyes locked on the giant's form as it took another step, the ground shuddering under its weight. She had heard stories. Juggernauts didn't save people. They erased problems. If the colony deemed you useless, a Juggernaut made sure you never became a burden again. Her breath quickened. She wanted to move, to roll away, but her hands were too weak to push the heavy chair. The robot's head tilted slightly, its red eyes focusing on her. The crowd had already stepped far back, leaving a wide, empty circle around them. No one dared interfere. The Juggernaut stopped just a step away, its shadow covering her completely, its head lowered. And with a faint mechanical hum, it crouched. Slightly in action so unnatural for a killing machine that even the onlookers gasped. The girl's voice trembled. "Please, don't crush me." The robot didn't answer. It never spoke. Instead, a soft blue light flickered across its chest, and a quiet scanning sound filled the air. It was analyzing her, her injuries, her weakness, her condition. The girl's heart pounded, sure that the next sound she'd hear would be the hiss of a weapon charging. But then, the Juggernaut's massive, armored hand reached forward, slowly, carefully, like a parent reaching for a fragile glass. The crowd held their breath. Was this mercy or execution? The girl's hands curled into fists, her eyes squeezing shut. She braced herself for the end. But instead of pain, she felt herself being lifted, not roughly, but with impossible gentleness for something made of metal. When she opened her eyes, she found herself sitting high on the robot's armored shoulder. The colony spread out below her. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "That's not possible. Juggernauts don't do that." Another said, "It's broken," or "Something's controlling it," far away, in the dim glow of a hidden workshop at the colony's edge. A human man sat watching a flickering monitor. His eyes widened as the Juggernaut turned toward the outer streets, carrying the girl away from the place where she had been abandoned. The man leaned closer to the screen, muttering under his breath, "What are you doing, old friend?" The girl, still trembling, dared to whisper to the metal giant, "Where are you taking me?" The Juggernaut gave no answer, but its steady footsteps were the first sound in hours that didn't make her feel alone. And for the first time since her mother let go of the wheelchair, she didn't feel like she was about to be left behind forever. The silent giant, the Juggernaut, moved with slow, deliberate steps, each one sending a deep tremor through the cracked stone streets. The girl sat high on its armored shoulder, her hands gripping a thick metal plate for balance. The height was dizzying, and the machine's movement was steady, but unnerving, as if each step carried the weight of a mountain. Below, the crowd followed at a distance, whispering among themselves. They had seen Juggernauts before, but always as weapons of fear, never as rescuers. Some thought the unit was malfunctioning. Others believed it was carrying the girl to a place no one dared speak of. One alien muttered, "No one ever returns when a Juggernaut takes them." Another whispered back, "Maybe that's mercy in this colony." The girl swallowed hard, trying to find her voice. Her small body shook, not from the cold, but from the memory of her mother's eyes turning away. She forced herself to look at the machine's giant head beside her. "Why? Are you helping me?" she whispered, even though she knew it wouldn't respond. The Juggernaut's head shifted slightly, the red glow of its eyes scanning the alley ahead. It didn't speak, it couldn't, but a faint hum came from deep within its chest. A warm vibration pulsed through the armor, almost like a heartbeat. The girl didn't know why, but it made her feel a little less like she was one breath away from disappearing. They passed through a narrow street where children peered out from doorways, their faces thin and dirty. Some ran after the Juggernaut, calling out, "Where's it taking her? Is she in trouble?" But the adults quickly pulled them back inside. Slamming the door shut, no one wanted to be too close to a machine built for war. The girl dared to glance over her shoulder. The colony's outer wall was far behind now. Her mother was gone. And there was no going back. She wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come, somewhere deep inside. She felt that showing weakness now would make her vanish faster. The Juggernaut turned into a wider street, the crowd thinning away. The hum of its servos echoed against the walls. Above, the sky had deepened into a darker shade of orange, the first stars beginning to pierce through the haze. The girl's mind began to wander. Where was it taking her? Suddenly, a sound cut through the stillness, a high-pitched beep from inside the Juggernaut's head. Far away, in a dim workshop on the colony's edge, Ethan, the human engineer, leaned closer to a set of dusty monitors. The Juggernaut's visual feed flickered on his main screen, showing the girl perched on its shoulder. Ethan's brows furrowed. "That's impossible," he muttered. He had reprogrammed this unit months ago for scavenging metal, not rescuing people. Something had changed in its core commands, something unexpected. He pressed the transmitter to his mouth, speaking directly into the Juggernaut's hidden comms. "Unit 7, this is Ethan. What are you doing with the girl?" The Juggernaut's head tilted slightly. The girl noticed, though she didn't know why, but it didn't stop walking. Ethan's voice sharpened. "She's injured. She won't last the night out there. Bring her to the workshop." Now, the Juggernaut's internal systems processed the command. Its path shifted, steering away from the central plaza toward the colony's outer industrial zone. The girl felt the change in direction, but didn't know the reason. "Where are we going?" She tried again. The Juggernaut didn't answer, but its pace quickened. They passed under a low archway, the sound of boots following close behind. Two alien patrolmen had noticed the change in the Juggernaut's route. One of them raised a communicator. Command. Unit 7 is moving unauthorized cargo. Static crackled. Then a voice replied. Stop it immediately. Disable if necessary. The girl spotted the patrolman in the distance, and her stomach tightened, even without knowing their orders. She could see it in their eyes. They weren't coming to help her. Her small hands tightened on the armor. Please. Don't let them take me, she whispered, not caring if the Juggernaut could understand. The red glow of the machine's eyes deepened. Ethan's voice came again through the comms, firm this time. Don't stop, Unit 7. Do not let them intercept you. Bring her here, now. The patrolmen quickened their pace. One shouted, Halt! Return the asset. The Juggernaut's servos whined as it increased speed, each step echoing like a drumbeat. The girl clung tighter as they raced through a narrow side street, the metal plates under her fingers vibrating with every stride. A hoverbike engine roared behind them, its blue light spilling over the walls. The patrolmen were giving chase. The Juggernaut didn't look back. It simply kept moving, faster than any of them had ever seen it move. The girl's hair whipped in the wind, and for the first time, she realized this machine wasn't just carrying her. It was protecting her. Up ahead, the colony's industrial pipes loomed like the ribs of a giant beast. Beyond them, somewhere in the maze of scrap and shadow, was Ethan's workshop. The Juggernaut was almost there, but the sound of the hoverbike was closing in. The girl's heart pounded. She didn't know if they would make it, but for reasons she couldn't explain. She believed the Juggernaut would not let her go. It was the first belief she'd had since her mother walked away. The human engineer Then's hands moved quickly over the dusty console. Eyes locked on the flickering feed from Unit 7's optical sensors. The image shook with each heavy step the Juggernaut took, showing brief flashes of rust-stained walls, glowing signs in alien script, and the terrified but determined face of the girl on its shoulder. Her hair was whipping in the wind, and though she gripped the machine tightly, Ethan could see the strain in her arms. Hang in there, kid, he muttered under his breath. The hoverbike's light flared in the feed, dangerously close. Ethan leaned toward the microphone. Unit 7. Left, take the drainage path. Now, the Juggernaut obeyed instantly. Its massive frame turning down a narrow, sloping alley that stank of oil and stagnant water. Metal pipes dripped overhead, and a thin mist clung to the ground. The girl coughed, the bitter taste of metal filling her mouth. She glanced at the huge robot's head beside her. You know where you're going? She asked, her voice small but curious. The Juggernaut didn't reply. It never did, but the sudden shift in pace made her believe it did have a destination. Behind them, the hoverbike swerved into the alley, its rider shouting over a comlink command. It's heading toward the human sector. Permission to engage. A crackle of static answered, followed by a harsh voice. Engage with caution. Capture the girl alive. The Juggernaut is expendable. Ethan heard every word through the Juggernaut's comms relay. His jaw clenched. They're not taking her, he said, almost to himself, then into the mic. Unit 7, defensive mode. Minimal force, keep. Her safe, the machine's red visor flared brighter, a low mechanical growl vibrating through its frame. It stopped suddenly, swung its massive arm backward, and slammed it into the wall beside the hoverbike. The force sent shards of stone and metal into the air, blocking the rider's path. The bike swerved, clipped a pipe, and went spinning out of control. The girl gasped at the sudden violence. But the Juggernaut was already moving again, pushing deeper into the industrial maze. Minutes later, they emerged into a shadowed open area filled with towering piles of scrap and broken machinery. In the center stood a squat, reinforced structure with faint yellow light glowing from its windows. The Juggernaut slowed as it approached, stepping. Over a half-collapsed gate inside the workshop, Ethan grabbed a wrench and hurried to the door. He pulled it open just as the Juggernaut ducked to fit inside, the girl still clinging to its shoulder. The smell of metal, grease, and faint ozone filled the air. Ethan's sharp blue eyes scanned the girl quickly. Pale skin, thin frame, and a strange brace around her legs that clearly hadn't been maintained in years. "Put her down gently, Unit 7, Ethan ordered. The Juggernaut obeyed. Lowering the girl onto a padded workbench, her hands immediately went to her wheelchair, which was missing, and panic flashed in her eyes. Where? Where is it?" Ethan gestured to a corner where the battered chair sat. "I'll fix it. You won't need to worry about it falling apart anymore." She didn't answer right away, just stared at him with suspicion. "You're human," she finally said, her voice almost accusing. Ethan gave a small shrug. "Last I checked," he said with a faint smile, then added, "Name's Ethan, and you are." She hesitated before whispering, "Sira." Ethan nodded and began inspecting the chair, his skilled hands moving fast. "You've got damaged bearings, bent supports, and a cracked axle." "I'm amazed you've been moving at all," Sira said. Nothing, her gaze flicking between him and the Juggernaut. The huge machine stood silently nearby, almost like a guard dog watching over them. Finally, she spoke, her voice tight. "My mother. She left me." Ethan stopped for a moment, his grip on the wrench tightening. He had seen this before. The colony's unspoken rule that anyone who couldn't pull their weight was left behind. He wanted to say something, but he could tell Sira wasn't ready for comfort. Instead, he nodded toward the Juggernaut. "It didn't leave you," he said simply. Her eyes softened just a fraction. "Why?" she asked. Ethan glanced at the robot. "That's a question I'd like answered to." Before Sira could reply, a sharp alarm blared from Ethan's wall console. He strode over and checked the scanner, multiple heat signatures moving through. The scrap field, closing fast. "Damn," he muttered. "They tracked you here." Sira's breath quickened. "They'll take me back," she whispered. Ethan turned to the Juggernaut, his voice firm. "Lock the doors. Prepare to move her if they breach." The robot's massive frame shifted, stepping toward the entrance with heavy, deliberate steps. Outside, faint voices could be heard. Ordering the search team to spread out, Ethan crouched beside Sira, speaking low. "Listen, kid, I don't know why they want you, but I do know this. They won't get you while I'm breathing." Her wide eyes searched his face. Looking for a lie, she didn't find one for the first time since her mother left. Tiny spark of hope flickered in her chest. Outside, footsteps crunched closer through the scrap. The Juggernaut's visor flared, its systems humming to life. Sira's fingers curled over the bench edge. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew she wasn't facing it alone anymore. Chased through the colony, the first metallic bang hit the workshop door like a hammer against steel. The walls shook, dust raining down from the rafters. Sira flinched, her fingers gripping the edge of the bench so hard her knuckles turned white. Ethan didn't even look at her. His eyes were locked on the entrance. "Unit 7, he said in a calm but firm voice. "Time to move." The Juggernaut's heavy frame shifted instantly. With a hiss of hydraulics, it turned toward Sira, massive hands extending. She didn't resist when it lifted her from the bench. Though her eyes were wide and uncertain, her small body disappeared into the safety of its armored chest as the protective plating folded partially around her like a shield. Another slam on the door, this time accompanied by shouting, "Open up, return the girl." The voice was rough, commanding. Ethan grabbed a small control pad from his workbench and tapped in a series of commands. The floor beneath the Juggernaut's feet vibrated as a hidden panel in the far wall slid open, revealing a narrow escape. "Tunnel, go," Ethan ordered. The Juggernaut stepped into the tunnel just as the front door gave a loud, tortured screech. Light spilled through cracks in the metal. Ethan followed behind, sealing the wall shut behind them. The sounds of boots rushing into the workshop fading as they moved deeper into the tunnel. The escape route was cramped for a machine of the Juggernaut's size. Every step made the walls groan, pipes scraping against its armor, but it didn't slow down. Sierra could hear the faint hum of its internal systems and the steady beat of its heavy footfalls, oddly reassuring in the dark. A sharp burst of static crackled inside the Juggernaut's audio systems. Ethan's voice came through the internal comms. "They've got hover bikes, and they're not afraid to use them once we hit the open streets. They'll be on us." The tunnel ended abruptly at a heavy hatch. Ethan moved past the Juggernaut, cranking it open. The night air rushed in, cool and smelling faintly of ozone. Above, the sky had deepened to black, the orange hue gone. A thin crescent moon hung over the jagged silhouette of the colony. The Juggernaut stepped out first. Scanning the street, it wasn't empty for long. The whine of engines approached from both ends, blue light flickering off the metal walls. "Move." Ethan barked. The Juggernaut broke into a run, the ground shaking under its weight. Sierra clung to its chest plating, the world rushing past her in a blur of shadow and neon light. The first hoverbike swooped in low, its rider leaning forward. Aiming a stun rifle, a bolt of white energy cracked past the Juggernaut's shoulder, scorching the wall. Ethan, running just behind, pulled a small flash grenade from his belt. He yanked the pin and tossed it. A burst of blinding light filled the alley, the bike swerving violently into a pile of crates, sending its rider tumbling. But the second bike didn't slow. It closed in from the left, trying to cut them off. The Juggernaut shifted Sierra to one arm and swung the other like a steel battering ram. The impact sent the hoverbike spinning into the wall with a crunch of metal. Sparks rained onto the street. They tore through a narrow passage between two old factory buildings. Up ahead, the path split. One way led back toward the central market, the other toward the outer colony wall. Ethan's voice came through. "The come urgent. Take the market route, too crowded for them to use the bikes." The Juggernaut veered right, boots pounding on cracked stone within moments. They burst into the edge of the market district. Dim stalls lined the streets, some still open. Vendors shouting to late-night customers. The sudden arrival of a massive war machine carrying a child sent people scattering. Sierra heard their voices as they passed. "That's the human's robot. Why is it carrying her? Should we call the guards?" But no one stepped forward. No one wanted to be in the way. Behind them, the sound of pursuing footsteps grew louder. Without the bikes, the guards were on foot now. But they were gaining. The Juggernaut pushed harder, weaving through the maze of stalls. Its sensors picked the fastest route, avoiding dead ends and choke points. One guard took a desperate shot, the bolt hitting the Juggernaut's backplating. The machine staggered slightly, the smell of scorched metal filling the air. Sierra gasped. "Are you hurt?" She asked instinctively. The Juggernaut didn't answer, but its grip around her tightened a silent reassurance. Finally, they burst out of the market into the open street near the outer wall. Ethan caught up, breathing hard. "Gates ahead." He pointed. "But it's locked tight at night. We'll need another way." The Juggernaut scanned the wall and found a rusted maintenance door half hidden behind a storage shed. It charged forward, lowering its shoulder. The door exploded. Inward, the sound echoing like a cannon blast. Beyond lay the dark, barren expanse outside the colony, lit only by the faint glow of distant mountains. They didn't stop running until the colony's lights were far behind. The chase was over for now. Sierra peered over the Juggernaut's shoulder at the faint outline of the colony. Her voice was barely a whisper. We made it." Ethan looked at her and nodded. but his tone was grim. For tonight, maybe. But they won't stop. We just became their problem. And they don't let problems go. The Juggernaut stood silent, scanning the darkness ahead. Its red visor glowed faintly. It wasn't afraid, but somewhere in its silent programming, a new directive was beginning to form, one that had nothing to do with orders. One that had everything to do with protecting the girl, the workshop refuge the desert wind howled outside. Carrying the faint scent of scorched metal from the colony gates they had just forced open, Ethan led the way through the darkness, his boots crunching over dry gravel while the Juggernaut followed. Each heavy step sinking into the dusty ground, Sierra remained cradled in the machine's arms, her head turning from side to side as she took in the alien landscape beyond the colony. Walls. The world out here was quiet, too quiet. No voices, no market sounds, no clanging of machinery. Only the whisper of the wind and the occasional screech of some distant nocturnal predator. She gripped the Juggernaut's armor tighter, her heart still racing from the chase. Where are we going? She finally asked, her voice hoarse. Ethan didn't look back. My old place, it's not much, but it's safe. Safer than anywhere else right now. The old place turned out to be a low, wide building half buried in the sand. Its roof was rusted but intact, the walls reinforced with scavenged plating. A set of faded human letters above the doorway read, Outpost 14, Maintenance Bay. The door opened with a groan, revealing a dim interior lined with workbenches, tool racks, and shelves full of spare parts. Faint light came from a single lantern, hanging above a central table inside. Quickly, Ethan urged. The Juggernaut stepped in and set Sierra gently down onto a padded bench. She felt the cushions sink beneath her weight and let out a shaky breath. Her legs tingled uncomfortably, but she didn't complain. She was too busy glancing around, absorbing the details. It didn't look like a home, but it also didn't feel like a place that would throw her away. Ethan moved to the shelves, pulling down a dented metal thermos and a small cup. He poured water into it and handed it to her. Drink slow, he said. Sierra hesitated, then took it with both hands, sipping cautiously. The cool liquid felt like the first good thing she'd tasted in days. The Juggernaut stood near the door, its visor glowing faint red. Every so often, it rotated its head slightly, scanning the surroundings for movement. It didn't relax, machines like it never did. But there was something about the way it stayed close to her that made Sierra feel a strange sort of protection. Ethan crouched down beside her wheelchair, which had been dumped in the corner during the escape. He rolled it over and examined the frame. This thing is barely holding together, he muttered, running his fingers along the cracked axle. Sierra lowered her gaze. It was all we had, she said quietly. Ethan's hands stilled for a moment before he spoke. Not anymore. I'll rebuild it, make it better than new. For the first time, her expression softened. You'd do that for me. Ethan gave a faint smile. I don't fix just machines, he said, tapping the side of the wheelchair frame. I fix what matters. While Ethan worked, the Juggernaut finally moved, stepping toward a charging port on the far wall. It connected with a heavy cable, but its visor never dimmed. Its sensors still swept the room in constant vigilance. They had only been there an hour when the piece was broken. The Juggernaut's visor flared a deeper red, a soft warning tone echoing through the workshop. Ethan immediately set down his tools and hurried to the door. What is it? Sierra asked, her voice tense. The Juggernaut's massive hand lifted, pointing toward the north wall. Beyond the reinforced plates, faint vibrations could be felt. The steady, rhythmic thud of boots approaching. Ethan cursed under his breath. They're sweeping the outer perimeter already. Didn't think they'd find us this fast. Sierra's grip tightened on the bench edge. They're coming for me, aren't they? Ethan turned to face her. Yes, but we're not letting them take you. He glanced at the Juggernaut. Unit 7, hold position by the door. If they breach, you get her out through the back access. The machine's head dipped in a slow nod, hydraulics hissing as it took position. It was an image that burned into Sierra's mind, the massive war machine standing between her and danger like a silent wall. Minutes passed in tense silence. The sound of boots grew louder, mixed with muffled voices. One alien voice barked an order in a language Sarah didn't know. But the tone was clear. It was the voice of someone who thought they were in control. Ethan crouched beside Sarah again, speaking low and steady. They might try to bluff their way in. No matter what they say, you stay close to Unit 7. She nodded quickly, her heart pounding. Then came the first sharp knock. 3 hard raps against the metal door. Open up, human, a voice called. We're just here to talk. Ethan shot a glance at Sarah. That's a lie, he whispered. The Juggernaut's visor flared brighter, its servos tightening. Another knock, this one harder. We know. You have the girl. Give her to us and no one gets hurt. Sarah shivered, every instinct telling her to shrink back into the shadows. Ethan didn't move toward the door. Instead, he gave the Juggernaut a single nod. Not today. The machine stepped forward, the floor vibrating under its weight, on the other side of the door. The sound of weapons being readied echoed faintly. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. They were seconds away from a fight. She didn't know how long they could hold out here. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about escape anymore. The colony had marked her, and whatever reason they had, it was big enough to send soldiers into the night after her. The mother returns. The pounding on the workshop door grew louder, each strike rattling the tools hanging on the walls. Sarah's fingers dug into the bench cushion, her breathing quick and shallow. Ethan stayed crouched beside her, one hand on the handle of his sidearm. The Juggernaut stood at the door like a metal fortress, visor glowing blood red, waiting for the order to move. Then, without warning, the pounding stopped. Silence fell over the workshop, the kind of silence that made the air feel heavier. Sarah's eyes darted to Ethan. Did they? Go, she whispered. Ethan shook his head slowly. No, they're just changing tactics. A single, deliberate knock echoed against the metal, softer this time, and then a voice that made Sarah's blood run cold. Sarah? It's me. Open the door, sweetheart. Her stomach twisted. It was her mother's voice, calm and almost gentle, the same voice that had told her forgive me before vanishing into the crowd. The same voice she had screamed after until her throat burned. Ethan's brows furrowed. He had expected guards, maybe a commander, not this. He glanced at Sarah. You know that voice, he said quietly. Sarah's throat felt tight. It's my mother. The voice came again, warmer, almost pleading. I came back for you. I didn't want to leave, but I had no choice. Sarah's lips trembled. It was the kind of tone that could pull a child forward despite every hurt, but something deep inside her whispered a warning. It didn't sound like regret. It sounded like bait. Outside, another voice, sharper, male, muttered something in the alien language. Her mother replied quickly, her words hurried and low. Ethan couldn't catch the meaning, but the tone was enough. They're with her, he murmured. This isn't a rescue kid. It's a handover. Sarah's eyes stung. She brought them. Ethan nodded grimly. She brought them straight to you. The Juggernaut's massive frame shifted, taking one slow step forward until it completely blocked the door. Its servos gave a low mechanical growl. The sound alone made the voices outside falter for a second. Her mother called again, this time firmer. Sarah, they're here to help us. If you come with me now, you'll be safe. Sarah's hands curled into fists. Safe, the same word her mother had used before pushing her out into the cold street. She looked at Ethan, her voice trembling but steady in meaning. "I'm not going with her." Ethan gave her a sharp nod of approval. "That's the right choice, but it means they'll force the issue." As if on cue, a metallic clang echoed through the door. Someone outside had started cutting through the locks. Sparks hissed against the metal, the harsh light flashing under the seam. Ethan backed toward the bench where Sierra sat. "Unit 7, you know what to do." The Juggernaut's visor blazed brighter, its shoulder panels sliding open to reveal shield plates. It positioned itself low, ready to burst forward the second the breach opened. The sound of the lock cutter intensified, then stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was short-lived. The door exploded inward with a force that sent shrapnel. Across the workshop, 2 armored alien guards stepped through first, their weapons raised. Behind them, her mother appeared, framed in the doorway. Her clothes were cleaner now, her posture straighter, and her eyes. Her eyes were cold, calculating. For a brief moment, the 2 locked eyes. Sierra felt something deep inside break, not because she hated her, but because she still wanted her to be the mother she had once believed in. But the woman's gaze didn't soften. Instead, she stepped aside and gestured to the guards. "Take her," she said. "Not please, not careful, just take her." The first guard took a step forward, and the Juggernaut moved. Its massive arms swung down like a steel hammer, slamming into the floor just in front of the guard's boots. The shockwave sent him stumbling backward into the wall. The second raised his weapon, but Ethan was faster, firing a warning shot into the floor beside him. The noise made the room tremble. "This is your only warning," Ethan growled. "She stays." Her mother's expression twisted. "You don't understand. They'll kill me if I don't bring her back." Ethan's voice was ice. "Maybe. You should have thought about that before you sold her out." The woman's jaw tightened. "She's not worth dying for," she spat. The words hit Sierra like a blow. But the Juggernaut's frame shifted closer to her, blocking her view of the doorway as if to shield her from the venom in that voice. The standoff stretched for seconds that felt like minutes. Then the male guard outside barked an order, and the 2 soldiers retreated, dragging her mother with them. She didn't fight them, didn't even look back, and just like that, she was gone again, swallowed by the night. Sierra stared at the empty doorway, her voice barely a whisper. She didn't even try. Ethan placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You've got a new family now, one that doesn't walk away." The Juggernaut stood over her, visor dimming slightly. It didn't speak. But somehow she understood. As long as it stood, nothing would take her without a fight. But deep in the night outside, the colony forces regrouped. This wasn't over. They had lost a skirmish, not the war. And next time, they'd come ready for the Juggernaut. Juggernaut's choice the night was heavy with silence. Only the faint hum of the Juggernaut's cooling systems filled the workshop. Sierra sat on the padded bench, her eyes fixed on the closed door where her mother had stood moments earlier. Ethan paced slowly, a tool still in his hand, not because he was fixing anything, but because it kept his hands busy while his mind raced. "They'll be back," he said finally, "not with 2 guards this time. With a full strike team." His voice was low, but the weight behind it made Sierra's chest tighten. She glanced at the Juggernaut. "They'll destroy him, won't they?" Ethan paused, looking at the towering machine. "They'll try," he said simply. The Juggernaut's visor glowed faintly as it turned toward Sierra. It stood perfectly still, yet she felt its attention lock onto her in that moment. She realized something strange in all her fear of this machine when she first saw it. She had never once felt unsafe in its presence. A distant rumble broke her thoughts. It wasn't thunder. It was the deep, rhythmic thud of heavy transports approaching. Ethan hurried to a small viewing slit in the wall. His shoulders stiffened. They brought an APC. And drones, the Juggernaut stepped forward without a sound from Ethan's order. Moving toward the door, Syrah's voice caught. "What are you doing?" It didn't answer. It simply opened a compartment on its chest and began adjusting. Something inside, hydraulics hissed, armor plates shifting into a defensive configuration she hadn't seen before. Ethan turned to her urgency in his eyes. "When the fight starts, I'm getting you out through the back tunnel. No arguing?" But Syrah shook her head. "I'm not leaving him." Her voice cracked, but her gaze stayed steady. The rumble outside grew louder until it became a wall of sound. Blue searchlights swept over the building. Drones buzzing overhead, a voice boomed through a loudspeaker. "This is your final warning. Surrender the girl and the machine, or we will breach." Ethan gritted his teeth. "Unit 7, he said. "Combat mode, non-lethal on organics." Unless absolutely necessary, the Juggernaut's visor flared bright red, a deep bass hum resonating through its frame. It stepped toward the door. Each movement slow but deliberate, the calm before the storm. The first blast hit the workshop. Wall like a meteor strike. Panels tore away, dust and debris filling the air. Syrah coughed, her eyes watering, but she could just make out dark armored figures moving through the smoke. The Juggernaut moved instantly, placing itself between her and the breach. Its shoulder cannon unfolded with a hiss, firing a concussive round that sent the first wave of soldiers tumbling back like ragdolls. The drones swooped low, spraying stun rounds. The Juggernaut's massive arm shot up, catching one in midair and crushing it with a single squeeze. Sparks rained down like fireflies. Another drone was swatted into the wall so hard it exploded in a ball of flame. Ethan pulled Syrah toward the back. But she resisted. Her eyes were fixed on the Juggernaut, on the way it moved, precise and unyielding. Every strike it delivered was meant to disable, not kill. It wasn't fighting for victory. It was fighting for her. Then, the APC at the edge of the scrap field opened fire. The round slammed into the Juggernaut's chest, sending it staggering. Its armor smoked, a deep dent marring the plating. Syrah gasped. "Ethan, he's hurt." But the machine straightened again, red visor blazing even brighter. If machines could feel pain, it wasn't showing it. The second blast came, and this time, the Juggernaut didn't dodge. It stepped in front of Syrah and took the hit squarely, the shockwave knocking Ethan off his feet. The machine dropped to one knee. Systems flickering, Syrah broke free from Ethan and ran to it. Throwing her arms around the dented metal, "Don't you dare leave me," she whispered, her voice shaking for the first time. The Juggernaut's visor shifted from red to a soft amber glow. It placed one massive hand gently on her back. Then, with a low mechanical growl, it pushed itself to its feet, turning to face the APC. It activated a final defense protocol. Ethan hadn't even programmed a shield generator stored deep within its frame. A shimmering barrier burst to life around them, the next APC shot bouncing harmlessly away. The guards outside hesitated. Unsure how to breach it, Ethan used the moment. Stepping forward with his weapon raised, "This ends now," he shouted. "You want her. You go through me and the Juggernaut, and I promise you, neither of us will break before you do." The commander hesitated, then barked an order to retreat. The transport's engines roared to life, the lights sweeping away into the night, one by one. The drones and soldiers withdrew until the only sound left was the wind over the sand. Syrah turned to the Juggernaut, her eyes shining with relief. "You stayed," she whispered. The machine didn't speak, but it knelt to her level, letting her place a hand against its visor. She smiled faintly. "You're my family now, Ethan." Still catching his breath, gave a tired laugh. "Looks like you've got yourself a bodyguard for life, kid." And as the first light of dawn touched the horizon, the three of them, the soldier, the child, and the silent giant stood together, not as fugitives, but as something stronger, something the colony would never understand.